back to another episode of my so-called Xennial life. Today, I am drinking my coffee. It's early in the morning, but I'm in the mood to do a video. Coffee, really good. And in my lap is one of my good buddies, my guinea pig, Brownie. Hi. And you can listen to the music outside, too, by some random driver who decides to blast music early in the morning. I actually do have another guinea pig named Midnight, but he's too young and he's very rambunctious. So anyway, on this episode, I figured it's time to do Saturday morning cartoons. And instead of doing my absolute favorite ones of all time, Muppet Babies, Ninja Turtles, I figured I'd do one that probably is not very well known to people, called Dink the Little Dinosaur. Who might know me well, or even from some of the past videos, as a kid and even still today, I very much loved dinosaurs. So obviously being a kid would have been drawn to this cartoon. Also possibly because a year before release of Dink the Little Dinosaur was The Land Before Time, which I absolutely love, and I will do future videos about The Land Before Time. But today we'll just do Dink the Little Dinosaur. So a little information about this cartoon. Dink the Little Dinosaur is an American animated series created by Karen Wilson and Chris Webber, produced by Ruby Spears Enterprises. Never heard of that. It's not like Hanna-Barbera where you've heard of it. The series originally aired as part of CBS Saturday morning lineup from 1989 to 1990, so it would have been about 10 to 11 years old. It did have 2 seasons. So while one show was a half hour long, typical, the show had 2 episodes in it that were about 10 to 12 minutes long. You know, obviously if you take out commercials, you know, the show's not as long. And back then, I will say, from what I understand, back in the 80s and 90s, from what I remember, commercial breaks were not as long as they are today. Today, you know, it's just, okay, you know, going through the, you know, DVR, trying to fast forward for it, these commercials, and it just seems to take forever. But back then, it really wasn't an issue. You pretty much had enough time to go either to use the bathroom or grab a drink. Of course, this was a time when being a little kid, back in the 80s and 90s, Saturday mornings was the it thing. It's when the TV belongs to the kids, and it's your turn to watch all these cartoons. And I was very much into cartoons. I was actually really into cartoons up until my teenage years. And depending on the cartoon now, I may still watch it as a old man. So as a 10-year-old, I accidentally came across this show, which wasn't, you know, uncommon back then, at least for me, when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Most of these shows I discovered by accident, especially unknown ones like Dink the Little Dinosaur and Peter Pan and the Pirates. You know, it wasn't something that you got from like the schoolyard. It wasn't like Muppet Babies and Ninja Turtles where everybody talked about it. And you didn't have the internet. You may have discovered it in like TV guide listings, but most of the time, at least for me, most of these cartoons I watched, I just put it on and I saw it. And because it had dinosaurs in it, of course I had to watch it. It had dinosaurs. The only thing that would have been better than dinosaurs is monsters, or dinosaurs and monsters. That would have been a really great cartoon. And I did watch the show regularly. I don't think I've seen every episode. There's a lot of episodes, you know, but like I said, it only had 2 seasons. But again, that doesn't seem to be too uncommon for many of the cartoons back then. They had 1, 2, maybe 3 seasons, and they usually never had a proper series finale. The only one I can think off the back of my head that actually had a proper series finale is I'll do an episode eventually on this one, is Gummy Bears. I do believe had a proper series finale, but everything else from Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers to Dink the Little Dinosaur to Peter Pan and the Pirates, and all the other ones just ended with no like proper story arc ending. But again, that was just very common back then. Us kids suffered so much. Ooh, I'm bright with the sun today. Well, I'm going to mention the characters in the show. Many of the characters I find to be, personally, to be rip-offs of The Land Before Time. I mean, I like Dink the Little Dinosaur. I have fond memories of that show, but it was a rip-off of The Land Before Time. So here's some of the list of the characters in the show. First one is obviously the main one, Dink, the brontosaurus who's kind, brave, and smart. Ooh! And he's obviously a rip-off of Littlefoot. Another one is Amber. Amber is the only female in the show, which again was quite common back then. Think the Smurfs. And she's a little bit based on Sarah from The Land Before Time, different species, but Amber is a little bit more likable. I'm not going to go too much on about The Land Before Time, but I do remember Sarah in the original Land Before Time being a bitch. She was really incredibly unlikable. She gets more likable in some of the sequels, but in the beginning she was just mean to Littlefoot. She was always, sorry to say this, she was constantly on the rag. She was just, it was like one of those early forms of like, you could tell it's a man who wrote the idea of female empowerment, which is that she's just going to be a bitch and nasty towards everybody for no good reason because I am woman, hear me roar, and it was probably written by a guy, no doubt. But Amber in this one, she has some traits that were similar to Sarah. She is a little bit more strong-willed, but she is a lot more likable. Hi, Joey. Next up, I'm going to talk about two characters. Scat, who has an incredibly annoying voice, but I always like him. I still kind of like him. You know, kind of like this very irritating voice.
This not go like Scat planned. Scat don't think I'm planned.
And then Skyler, who's so shy. I mentioned them together. They're combined. They kind of make up very similar to Ducky in The Land Before Time. You know, it's like they took Ducky from The Land Before Time and made him two separate characters of Scat and Skyler. Next up is Flapper, who is, I consider to be a ripoff of Petrie. I mean, the personalities are slightly different, but I do sense that they're, you know, they had to come up with their own version of Petrie in this show, so they did Flapper. And, you know, I don't remember Flapper. I do remember Flapper being in this show, but I don't think I cared for that character much. It wasn't like the other ones. I did like Amber, Dink, Skyler, and of course Scat, but I don't remember really caring too much for Flapper. Last but not least is Krusty, the old turtle. He doesn't appear to be a direct ripoff of any character from The Land Before Time. Maybe slightly Littlefoot's mother, or at least influenced by, you know, an older figure in The Land Before Time who's there to nourish and help the young folk. You know how it is. Now, you can find old episodes of Dink the Dinosaur, or at least some of them, on like places like YouTube and Dailymotion. I don't think they're on any streaming services, though I do think you can buy it on DVD, which I may do it one time. It is a show that I remember quite fondly as a kid, and I'm so bright here, by the way. I remember fondly as a kid, and it's one of these shows that, you know, I mentioned Ninja Turtles, the average person will know what that show is. Muppet Babies, the average person will know. DuckTales, don't know. Mention Dink the Little Dinosaur, I highly doubt many people would know that show. It just wasn't super popular, but it really meant a lot to me because, well, again, sound like a broken record, I just love dinosaurs, and I was still on the Land Before Time high, and I just remember thinking it was just a cute show and was something I watched quite often. So if you could find some of the old episodes, watch it. I think you'll find you actually will enjoy it. It's a shame it didn't last any longer than only 2 seasons. But that's show business, I guess. Joey says goodbye because now it's time to go. So like, subscribe, and share if you're so inclined. And hope to see you next time on my so-called Xennial life. There he is.